Hello, Erin. How are you today?
Hey, Gerardo. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being part of our series, Teams Reimagined. Let's kick our video with an introduction about your career, where you come from, and your role at Salesforce.
Yeah, sure. So again, hi everybody. Erin Williams. I'm the Regional Vice President for the Growth Portfolio of Partners over at Salesforce. And that remit covers the Australia and New Zealand markets. I first joined Salesforce just over 2.5 years ago, and have spent quite a bit of time in tech. Often I find myself back in the SMB space. It's a place I love to be. It's such an incredible part of our Australian and New Zealand economy, for that matter, and a super interesting part for me. So I've always tended to navigate around that sector and market. And my remit at the moment is really focused around partners and that entire partner ecosystem that delivers all the great value for our Salesforce customers.
Tell us a little bit about your career. I remember talking about with you in preparation for this call about and the incredible journey you've seen in the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, sure. So after my time at university, I headed off into a technical role, believe it or not, at Optus. And I distinctively remember that final interview where my team lead asked me that question that I have both received and thrown across the interview desk probably ever since, all those 20 years ago, which was, how do you feel about change? Do you like change? Because this industry, which was telecommunications, is all about change. And I remember thinking at the time, I won't say my age, but quite young, what a question. Like, of course I love change. Of course I love change. Isn't that what we all live for? It's what it's all about. And I don't think I really realized at the time exactly what that question really entailed. Telecommunications, software, tech, this entire industry is built on change and transformation. And those transformation cycles happen in such short sprints. So I answered with a hearty yes back then, and I answer with a hearty yes right now that I love change. But the reality is I have not seen change of this to this degree that we're experiencing right now, at the pace in which it's iterating right in front of us, before us, with us. It's incredible.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened? I know you were on mat leave when things go a little bit crazy back in March. But can you tell us what happened inside the business and how the company moved its entire workforce into a remote first organization?
Absolutely. So yeah, as you said, I was on maternity leave. So my husband, like many others, was having a normal day in the office, and was advised that he needed to move and shift that day to remote working. So he, like others, grabbed the screen, the desktop, whatever he could get his hands on. Not the chair. That was in hindsight, that was a shame, not getting the chair. And shifted home. And I was at home with two small children, one 3 and one not even 1. And I was, excuse me, I'm not ready for this. This is my space. This is my environment. I'm not ready for this home to be shifted into an office.
Yeah.
Like many others, we scrambled and flipped out the Bunnings card folding table into a desk space, and turned bedrooms into offices and turned lounge rooms into kindergartens. That was the choice that was not made for us. It was certainly one that was made for us, and like everybody else, just did that very, very quick pivot on the home front. But Salesforce was running a similar conversation with its people right from day one. In fact, I think Salesforce grounded all Salesforce employees from flying pretty early on. And actually, I think it was some of those early communications that made me think, gosh, someone knows something here. This is bigger than I had realized, bigger than what had been reported. And you certainly got a sense that this was not something, a random occurrence. It had this hallmark from the very early stages within Salesforce, that this was going to be taken seriously. This was going to have a global impact. And unfortunately, that is absolutely how it played out. So Salesforce knew that it had to communicate very, very swiftly and very, very upfront with its people. Remember, we are a workforce of 50,000 people reaching across all parts of the globe. So Gerardo, it was really important for Salesforce to get out and communicate very crisp around what that looked like and make that shift very, very quickly. So we engaged some specialists to help us really understand the best way to communicate at a time like this. We reached out to a chap by the name of Larry Brilliant, who's an epidemiologist and a philanthropist. And he advised us up front that this was a really important opportunity. It was an unprecedented time. And that what you really needed to focus on at a time like this was just communication and a high amount of contact. So what was a monthly email update that used to go out to employees about the nature of the business and what was going on, we moved to daily communications. And inside that daily communication was government advice, local advice, all of the different websites around where to look, how to stay safe. And actually, it was a really interesting piece of cut-through communication. It had over 70 to 80% open rates every day. And as the pandemic sort of moved and evolved over different sort of waves, the communication, the tone amongst it changed. But what we could all rely on was that one daily communication that would give us, as I said, the best links and updates and advice around how to manage at a time like this. Salesforce had recently acquired Tableau. And Tableau also provided some incredible diagnostics and dashboards to really help us understand the truth around what was happening in terms of reported cases and the status of those cases around the globe as well. So it really gave us a really good sense of strong, current, relevant and factful information. I don't know if you recall, but at the onset of the pandemic, some of the fact finding was a little loose around certain edges. So it was for me, it was certainly seen as the source of the truth. Not only did the company sort of move towards this daily communication piece, but it stood up what was an executive all hands call every week. Now, to pull the executive together on a weekly basis for an hour and a half and talk from one or a group of 4 or 5 folks to 50,000 employees at once was incredible, and an incredibly strong sign of the leadership within Salesforce. I'm very fortunate to have those folks that really leaned into the conversation to help employees understand what was going on, but also what Salesforce's response was to the pandemic. Salesforce, did some great things around that time. As you know, much of what we do is on the basis of trust and also giving back. So Salesforce was very, very big in giving back out to organisations and communities that needed that. And the executives certainly took the opportunity to use that platform to share some of those good stories at a time when people, I think, really, really needed to hear good stories and stories of hope at that time. So we stood up local leader calls that took place on a fortnightly basis with all of the local leadership, and adjusted the cadence to really ensure that people were getting the right information at the right time. Regular surveying was another thing for us. Our employee surveys generally go out once a quarter, but we increased the cadence of that to really listen to what people were feeling and how people were feeling at that time. People were experiencing different feelings all over the globe, depending on where they were in relation to the pandemic. So it was really important that we understood how our people were feeling at that point in time. Of course, from a health and safety perspective, we had to stand up local teams. Health and safety officers were spun up overnight, roles that hadn't existed in 2019, and a whole bunch of new resources around real estate and how we managed all of that communication around that time. Of course, we used to have an incredible event where we would bring together all of our customers, Dreamforce, and of course World Tour here in Sydney. And all of these events needed to be reimagined and reimagined really quickly. So I think it was March of this year where we had planned on meeting with 10,000 of our customers at World Tour. Gerardo, I think you've been involved in those events in the past. They are great events, and they're great because it's actually an opportunity for us to celebrate our customers, bring together our people, our customers, our partners, and talk about what matters to us more than anything, which is celebrating our customers and celebrating their success in using the platform, and really listening to our customers take center stage and talk about how Salesforce is helping to transform their business. it's actually what we all get up to do every day. So to take that event away from us in the ways in which we had been used to experiencing it was a really tough one for people to think about. So within a matter of, I think it was less than 2 weeks, I think it was 9 working days, we moved from a 100% people event to a 100% virtual event.
That is incredible.
And that it was a big shift, and well done to the team who did that.
Impressive.
And what was really interesting is that our CEO, Pip Marlow, who delivered the keynote speech, was expecting to reach out to around about 10,000 people, which was the amount of people that we had signed and registered to attend the World Tour event. Instead, we actually saw tenfold interest. So that original keynote went out to 100,000 people. So whilst it was a really tough transition and a super fast transition for us, we actually saw very quickly that it gave us the opportunity to talk to more people and spread the message to a greater audience as a result of being digital.
Erin, there are two things that I really love about the whole story that you just told us or shared with us about how Salesforce quickly shifted into remote. The first thing is how the company understood that they were not experts, or they are not experts in handling a pandemic, right? They need to reach out to an external expert, in this case, Larry Brilliant, and they took that information in. They managed really quickly to adapt and the communication cadence, bringing that all leadership all hands and make it a weekly thing. That tells me that Salesforce is a really good organization, and it seems very nimble despite how big it is. So that's really good to hear. When it comes to company culture, again, we all know that in the industry, Salesforce has a very good reputation of having one of the most incredible cultures or company cultures. How are you trying to keep that alive now that everyone is working remote?
Thanks for the question, Gerardo. It's a great one. One of the big draw cards for me to join Salesforce, and like so many of the people that join Salesforce, people join for the culture. It's known, and I can say, being on the inside of it, it's real. If culture is defined as the way that people do things, the way that people just naturally know how to do things, I think that the global pandemic has shown me that the culture must be very deep within the organization, because the amount of self-leadership that I saw demonstrated by people throughout the global pandemic and through this crisis. And I have to say that in parts of the globe, this isn't just a global pandemic and health crisis. This is now becoming an economic crisis, a social crisis, as well as an incredible health crisis. So to see our people be so resilient at a time like this speaks a lot about the deep setness of that culture that exists within the organization. I probably would suggest that what we're doing to keep alive culture is important, but I think it's what we did prior to the global pandemic that is really why we have been set up so far. And I say so far because this is, as we know, a moving feast. But as I can see right now, people have just known what to do. I have a book that's regularly in the bookshelf, which is a book by Robin Sharma, the leader who had no title. I think it spends more time out on loan than it does in the bookshelf. But it really talks to that notion of just knowing what to do and the importance of self-leadership, because I think leadership for an organization of 50,000 people could be very tiring for leaders to drive that drumbeat. What really matters is to try and see the individual folks setting sail on their own course and just knowing how to act at times like this. So I think that's certainly helped that deep set feeling of culture. But one of the biggest binding attributes of the culture within Salesforce is this culture of giving back. You know, Salesforce, inside of its 4 values, places giving back as one of its most important, one of its most important foundations. And for 20 years, we've had this incredible culture of giving back. I don't know if you know about our 1-1-1 model, Gerardo, but it's 1% of our time, so for employees, is given back to the community and places that need it the most. We give back 1% of equity. So up to this time last year, it was over $350 million that's been given back in grants. And we give back 1% of our product, so to not-for-profits and the education industries that really need to access tools like our, incredible platform to help them do business in the way that they do today. And we've also been able to go out to over 10,000 organisations and pledge 1%, which is to encourage this 1-1-1 model in their organisations as well. So I think, operating in the pandemic, this notion of getting back into the community, whether that's bush regeneration or cleaning up the oceans or moving, getting yourself into a kitchen for the day and peeling vegetables and putting a meal on the table for those that may not have the resource to do so, is something that Salesforce employees really, really love to do. And as I said before, it's 1% of our time, which equates to just a little under 8 days of the working week, of the working year rather, that Salesforce employees are encouraged to get back into community. I think about all those cultural moments that take place with my team, my partners, with customers. It's what's interesting, Gerardo, is that those moments of bonding and real connection often don't take place on in the boardroom, or on video calls, dare I say it. They often take place when, the walls are down, there's no inhibitors. You're just two people or a group of people getting together and having a conversation and doing something for the purpose of good, or rallying around this. I find that sort of cultural stream that runs through Salesforce and many of our customers and partners as well has been incredible. So I think the fact that we had to get really creative this year as to how we did that was a real push for us. But we did manage to find lots of different ways through virtual applications to give back and do some of those cultural things. And we actually celebrated one of our employees last week down in Melbourne, who managed to find, throughout all of what was going on this year, to give back over 500 hours in community time, despite the challenges thrown his way. So, it's a huge one for Salesforce, and one that we really continue to thrive on, even though these times are a little tough.
That's incredible.
Yeah, look, it is, and I cannot wait, and I'll be calling out to all of our SMB partners and customers next year to get back out there and do some of those more traditional things to give back, as and when it's safe to do so.
It really
interestingly,
please go on.
I was just going to say that interestingly, that notion of giving back is incredible, and it's great to see that it's still alive. But as I mentioned earlier as well, the leadership culture of our executive coming to us and really giving back their time and helping us to understand what was going on was also really important. Mm-hmm. And we also stood up a really interesting series, which was called the Be Well series. This certainly helped the culture stay healthy and mindful. The series was led often by yoga instructors, meditation instructors, guided meditation, and it was all around being well, whether that was dietary. We even brought in celebrity chefs to start helping us cook healthy meals. There's throughout the school holiday program, there was often teachers and educators coming in to help us understand healthiness for our children as well. So it wasn't just being well for ourselves, mentally, physically, and emotionally. It was also about how to keep our families well, which was such an important time, given that we are all living in very, very close proximity at the moment. So I think a combination of those tools really helped to keep our culture really, really strong throughout this time.
It really starts with the people, right?
It does start with the people, and I think it's also important to understand how that looked through the leadership lens as well. I think, there were many sort of many leaders that were struggling around that time as well, and needed some additional support around how to lead their teams through this time. How do you inspire people over a video call? How do you performance manage over a video call? How do you actually practices that we've all just been doing every other day in our leadership careers? How do you actually offer that type of support at a time like this? And what does that need to look like? What are the cultural cues that you need to look for? What are those human cues that you need to look for about what is the right time, what is the right platform, and how do you actually do some of these very basic things that are part of leadership and management? within a time like this. So, very quickly picked up through one of those, as I said, regular employee surveys. Our leaders started to bring up some of these comments and ask that question. How do I do these things in this environment? So within a matter of months, we spun up a series to answer that, which was the Leading Through Change series, and that was designed to give leaders all of those, all the toolkits to help us understand, how to manage some of those, pretty contemporary elements in their leadership journey throughout this pandemic. The series became so interesting when they started bringing in quite a few celebrities and different people from all over the globe with different leadership views about how to come together at a time like this.
Yep.
That we actually launched the series to go out external.
I was just about to ask that. It would be interesting.
Yeah. Why hold the goodness in? Why not get it out there? So if you search, it was a really good one. So if you search Leading Through Leading Through Change series is actually the name of the series. You will find
we'll find the link and share it with the recording.
Please do. There's I'd love to hear from your folks and your viewers out there as to what their favorite was. I won't say what mine was, but go in and have a look, and I'd be super curious to hear about what resonates with people.
What was the key elements that you saw from those series, if you could share with us one or two that really stood out and gave you some of the strongest or the best tools to navigate what was the second half of the year?
So we pulled in Dr. Norman Kim for one of the series, and there was a session in there around gratitude. And I don't know if you've ever sat through a Salesforce presentation, but we often start off by saying thank you, because we find that there is a lot to be thankful for. And when you live life like that, and I'm not suggesting that I get that right every time, Gerardo, but if you can look through that lens, it's a really positive way to start any conversation. But this pushed that boundary a little bit further. Where Dr. Norman Kim was coming from was around gratitude. So while there's a lot to count that's not going well, and if you look at we're seeing it right now with this outbreak in Sydney, we're counting problems, we're counting negativity, we're counting, the cases at the moment in the UK, in the US, we're counting something pretty ordinary, right? Pretty horrible stuff. But throughout that, is there something to take gratitude around, and what can we be thankful for? What can we thank our lucky stars for? So I think starting off with that as a preset for every meeting and every engagement you have with people, it's going to instill a lot of faith. And I think for me, that was a really important one, because it's so easy to get caught up in the negativity. It's so easy to focus on the things that aren't going well. It's so easy to focus on the fact that, right now, as I sit here, there's drama in the living room with the kids as they're, in this home environment. We're all shifting and we're all very much close and living on top of one another, and that brings some wonderful moments, but it also brings some really big challenges as well. So it's all about setting that operating manual around, well, what do I want to think about today, and what do I want to focus on today, and how do I find the positivity within what's going on? So all of those tricks around gratitude, around physical well-being, around good nutrition, and how to be resilient at a time like this, they are some of the pieces that I think are the most interesting throughout that series. And there's lots of different speakers and editors and authors that will come through that series that hopefully your viewers can have a look at and hopefully find some inspiration in as well.
We'll find them and share them. When it comes to teams, what were some of the things that you learned out of those series that help you ensure that your team stayed connected and engaged and productive?
So no different to anyone else. It was all about regular conversation. So listening to the team, finding out what mattered to them at this point in time, being honest, being really upfront about what was going on. It's one thing to have gratitude and be thankful, but you also need to be real about exactly what's going on. So just taking that time to have a listen, have a think about what people are going through, understand that context, and act accordingly. I did a very, very transparent session with my team. We brought in an external party just 2 weeks ago. And with this particular group, we did a session on really understanding our squad. So what was important to our team in terms of the climate, in terms of what people were experiencing, and really just wanted to focus on, how this last 6 months has been going as we formed what is quite a new team all throughout this pandemic, as well as everything else. We actually stood up a new organisation within my greater business. And that was a really interesting time to be standing up a new team and a new function. But I wanted to sort of check in on how is that going for people? How is that playing out? What are your experiences? What can we make better? What do we need to improve? What's going well that we want to maintain next year? What are the areas that we need to improve? And rather than sort of debriefing that survey in a separate session and then having a think about how I want to steer that conversation, I said, you know what? Let's just play it out. Let's just be transparent. I'm not going to pre-review the survey results. I want to sit down with the group and I want to read it together.
Yeah.
So we did that. We sat down, we had a facilitator. I had a box of tissues to my left and a glass of water to my right. And I thought, hopefully there's nothing in here that's too dreadful, but I was ready to go no matter what. And we sat down and we read it through, and there was some great moments within there, some things that I was really proud of.
Yep.
Like everything, there was some things in there that I know we need to improve. But I think that spirit of transparency just really allows people to know that you don't have this perfect, Gerardo.
Yeah.
No one has this perfect. We are living in times right now where there is no rule book.
No.
We've all got great experiences that we can draw from and great collaborative people around us to help us understand how to do things better. But it's good, better, best. We're just trying to iterate to find ways to make our teams stronger, more resilient through times like this. So there's one thing I could talk about, it would be transparency. It is the most important thing to lead with at times like this. I think if the team see that and they see that you're willing to get in there and try things, you'll win them over every time. I mean, if you think about the onset of the pandemic, Gerardo, I'm sure you were involved in some of these awkward Friday drinks and awkward Friday trivia sessions. Some of those things work for people, but some of them don't.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay. I think if teams see that you're giving things a shot and trying,
yeah,
they'll come with you. They'll come with you on that journey. They know that we don't have a rule book for this either. So I think that notion of collaboration and transparency and giving things a shot was a really, really important one to advocate for, experience and practice throughout the course of this year.
Well, let's change gear a little bit. We've talked about your career and Salesforce, how an amazing job the company's done into shifting into new ways of work. I know you were on mat leave when COVID first struck, and you obviously were in a tricky situation not so tricky. You were in a different situation to many of us who had to go into a fully remote environment in a matter of 24 hours. You saw your husband do it. You were in the middle of your maternity leave. How is that from your side? How are you trying to find that optimal work-life balance, how many people call it?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, overnight the house went from, we just made the shift already with my husband and sort of working from home and spinning up bedrooms into offices. But it changed again when I had both of my hands freed up from the children. They were both not ready to go to kindergarten yet, so we had to bring in some help into the home. And all the bedrooms by this stage had flipped into kindergarten rooms, nap rooms, office space. It was a place that was a mum and two children at home to all of a sudden 6 people. So I guess that's double the capacity overnight. No matter how you look at it, it certainly felt like it was a pretty big weight of capacity for what is not a big home. And, like so many of us, we just found a way to figure it out. We got around the table and sat down and just prioritize, like what really matters here, what are our priorities as a family, and how do we make the most of that work. And, for me, it's finding space for that, mental space for each other, for the two parents. In our case, that's how the family rolls. We've got two parents, and a mum and a dad and kids, and everyone's priorities are important. So you've got to just sort of sit down and figure out how does that sit in the family map. And like so many people, I had a plan for how 2020 was going to go. We had a plan as to how the cover was going to look, how the work was going to look, what the dates were, what the shifts were, what the financial plan was around that. All that got torn up, and we started again. So, we sat down and kind of figured out what that needed to look like. And for me, the priority for me was absolutely getting back into the workforce and contributing and being productive, hopefully before September, but being productive and giving back.
I know you. I'm pretty sure you were very productive since day one, or even before that.
Well, I'll have to let others be the judge of that one, but certainly wanted to feel like it was back, hands to the pump and giving back at a time that I know really mattered, and the organisation certainly needed a lot of people to really step up and start contributing. So work didn't just sort of recommence in this slow ramp up. It was quite the opposite. I actually picked up the project of work.com, which, for those of you that don't know, it's that single pane of glass platform that Salesforce turned on, which allowed people to manage the health crisis for their workspace. So it's been deployed all over the world, and in parts of Australia as well. And it really was a tool to ping the health surveys, check in on employee wellness, as well as, safety checks like temperature checks. And it effectively takes all of that data and feeds it up into what is described as a single pane of glass, which allows people to make decisions about how to register shifts and how to actually manage their workspace in the most safe and possible way. So I didn't just sort of start back. I started back on something that was pretty pivotal and pretty important for Salesforce and our customers. So I went from, sort of craft on a Wednesday to standing up a project for the APAC region pretty quickly. So my mind shift needed to take place really quickly. The kids were going through their own adjustments, and the whole family was just adjusting to these times. But as I said, it goes back to prioritization. And what matters for me is, I want to be able to have a meal with the children. I want to be able to cook with the children and show them, the skills of cooking. I'm not suggesting that I am the chef, but I am certainly not, having had a few celebrity chefs drop in and spend some time with us, I can attest I'm far from that. But good cooking, healthy cooking is definitely important to me and the family. So that was something that I wasn't prepared to give up on.
Yeah.
I didn't want to outsource that. But if I can be honest with you, mowing the lawns or the occasional basket of washing being outsourced, some of these things, if you can afford to push some of those things out, then, these are things to have a look at. Does it change the financial plan for the year? Absolutely. But it meant that we could prioritize the time with the kids and the time with work and the time together. Yeah. So for us, that was a really, really easy decision to make. But, like all of this, it's about creating these virtual lines. It was really tough for the kids to see, craft mum go to this person that was sat behind this screen for many hours of the day. So I think what you've got to do there is just sort of take the mystery out of it. I found that when I was on a friendly call, I was able to, call my daughter who's 3 and my son who's 1 and bring them up onto the lap and show them who's on the other side of the screen and wave. And they're super cute, right? They're great little icebreakers. And sort of take out the mystery, explain what's going on, be super transparent around the things that are happening. Don't sort of roll your eyes and say, Mummy's got to go to work. Like, just explain it, break it down for them, help them understand what you're doing, why it's important, what it means. Not too much, they're only tiny, but giving a bit of a context as to what's going on is really important, given that we are all living in this space together.
It's I've loved that out of this not great situation, and it's just having your family around is really nice, and being able to share with them a little bit of what you do in more detail, and having them part of your day-to-day life. It's been great. As you know, I also have a little one, and I feel very fortunate and lucky that I've had the possibility to spend more time with her as she's going into her, what she's almost 18 months now. And
Wow.
if we were in the regular situation of commuting to our daily job and a 9 to 5 scenario, I would have lost a lot of those interactions that I was able to gain being working from home. So I'm really grateful for that.
Absolutely. I mean, the flexibility that, you know, this year has given us in this work home or living at work, working from home, depending on how you look at it, it certainly felt both ways for me, is incredible. You know, the flexibility that's been afforded to us, to parents, and not just parents, but everybody, the flexibility that people have been afforded to master hobbies, to master skills. Yeah. With all that commute time, you know, back in our diaries to prioritize what matters to us is so important. I mean, my husband and I were both in our spin-up offices, aka bedrooms, and our nanny yelled out to us and said, "He's walking!"
So good.
Both my husband and I downed tools and raced off to the lounge room to see us and our son take his first steps.
That's beautiful.
So, you know, exactly, like the flexibility that's been given to us at this time is incredible. And, you know, dare I say, there'll obviously be a new norm that cracks as a result of this, but you know, I'll take that. You know, that's a huge win for parenting is flexibility out of this year.
Yeah, definitely. So on that note, what would be the one advice you would give a new family or anyone thinking about starting a family during these times?
Gosh, well, in terms of where we are right now, 2020 has set up work-life flexibility like never seen before. I mean, I think, weren't we on that pathway around flexible work? For sure we were. But this, like everything you mentioned, Gerardo, around digital transformation and what so many customers are thinking about, this has also pushed things forward socially and for families as well. There has never been a more flexible time for the workforce than ever before. And that's, you know, for so many of us that run around with laptops, many of us have been running digital and virtual worlds or hybrid worlds for a long time. But this notion that you can work anywhere got really big in 2020. We proved it out. Many returning mums, you know, dads that took time out to be with their children as well in return. We've all been able to prove out that, if anything, we're more productive at times like this, because we're, you know, the argument is we're probably happier because we are getting some of that quality time in, thanks to the commute being taken away from all of us. I think that's something none of us miss, is that we've all got that time to put back into the family. So for many of us, we became very productive. In fact, if anything, there's a trap there, and that is around you know, too much productivity, too much screen time. All you've got to do now to be back online at work is flip up the laptop, find a Wi-Fi connection, and you're productive. So if anything, it's actually striking the right balance between working from home but also being present at home and being available for those key moments as well. So I think that's probably a platform that exists now, and what we choose to do with that in this next year and two, as we start to really figure out what this new normal is together, is what's going to become really interesting. But I think for new mums or new folks out there that are planning for families, I know when I talk to my friends and all the various social media groups that we're a part of, that is always bestowed upon you as a new parent, is parenting groups and kindy groups and what have you. The one thing that I hear people asking for, and did ask for over the last 3 or 4 years, was flexibility upon that return. Yeah. So as I said, that flexibility has never been greater for people. So I think that's an incredible opportunity for everyone.
Erin, we're running out of time, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. Any thoughts about the future?
No, except to say that you know, it's an interesting road ahead. I don't know. We were looking back at the Christmas pictures for this time a year ago, and just looking at how much has changed. I don't know where we stand in a year from now, but I know that we have become an incredibly resilient group of people. You know, parents out there, the kids have become incredibly resilient. We saw all of the HSC students receiving their results, and what an inspirational bunch of kids to say that, we're the class of 2020, look at us, and really proud. Really, really proud. I saw kids that went through kindergarten for the first time this year. I mean, what a year to be starting school and coming into this platform. And again, just the pride that shone through there, incredible. So I think whilst there's sort of tough times again back for Sydney, look at our folks and colleagues in Melbourne and have a look at what they did throughout this time. It's testament to their strength. And I think the creativity that's coming from people at the moment, to shine through and find a reason to keep going is just incredible. I think the resilient pace of people at this time is it's groundbreaking, and it's something we're probably all going to look back at and realize, wow, that was quite the year, quite the era.
Yeah.
So look, I'm really fascinated to see and curious to see where we go next year with this, and I think it's really important that we stay focused, take some time out, turn the screens off over the next couple of weeks, although by the time folks see this, they're probably turning the screens back on. But hopefully by then they've all rested, recharged, and ready for what 2021 has in store.
Awesome. I'm going to end by saying that one of my favorite things about this conversation was the approach that Salesforce has about being grateful. And that's going to stick with me. I love that approach. So I'm going to try and take that into remote social. I'm going to steal it. It's a beautiful thing to do.
Absolutely. Well,
we really
on
are.
That note, Gerardo, good luck for remote social for 2021, and well done on standing this up in the year of the pandemic. So good luck to you, and great things ahead for you, I'm sure, no doubt.
Thank you so much, Erin. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing all the beautiful stories and insights with our community. And we'll stay in touch.
Great. Bye.
Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed that conversation. If there's any particular topic you would like to hear about, reach out to us via our social media channels.